Good afternoon and welcome to the Monday, February 9th, 2009 informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. I'll now call this meeting to order. First order of business will be the City Council staff report. We have updates from Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a good report, if you will. House Bill 1145, which we talked about last week, that is a sidewalk waiver. It will change current language in the law to read, if the income was less than $10,000 for the annual household, to change that to state it does not exceed the federal poverty level as updated annually on the Department of Social Services website. And that has passed the House entirely, 67-0 on consent. So we're looking forward. That was a project of Councilmember Litz and Councilmember Stagger, so we'll see that move forward. In addition, just to give you an update, I know that some of you are watching House Bill 1196. That is continuing to make its way through as of yet. Prime on the Senate side is Dempster, Senator Dempster from our Sioux Falls area, so you may want to speak with him. Otherwise, I just have a report to let you know that the Breakfast Club next week on Wednesday, February the 18th, we'll have the Mike Sullivan from the Sports Authority there to talk to us, and the public is welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of Deborah? Being none, is anybody here from the Councilor Knudsen?
Thank you. Just regarding Breakfast Club with the Sports Authority, just want you to know that there'll be opportunities to learn more about the Summit League Tournament March 7th through 10th here in our great city, and also to learn exactly the schedule and volunteer opportunities. We're still looking for people to host teams and host coaches, and we're still just looking for lots of volunteers. Now, if people want more information, they can go to SiouxFallsSportsAuthority.com.
Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, I had a question for Deb. Deb, last council meeting we briefly talked about some titles of ordinances and things like that, and I know you sent an email about that. Did we ever get any amendments to change these titles so we can differentiate the titles?
You know, I'm not, I'm sorry, can you refresh was that at the informational or at the 7 o'clock?
Well, at the 7 o'clock, we had these bonds we're going to be voting on tonight. And, two of the titles are dealing with the wastewater. The titles are exactly the same. You can't tell the difference. And likewise with the water system revenue bonds, their titles are exactly the same. You can't tell any difference. And we had talked about, maybe providing more information. And
thank you. And I didn't attend that, but I did go back and watch that archived video. My understanding from watching the video was that I believe Council, Mr. Hayek and the department were going to change or perhaps revise those titles moving forward. So I can check into that. I think this is the first reading, or is that the second reading on these?
We're on the second reading tonight. Yeah.
Okay.
As I recall, the conversation went, did we want to change horses in the middle of the stream on a legal financial instrument that was being recorded? And I thought that perhaps we were going to move it for the next time so they didn't have to go through quite a few volumes of work.
It's not really that hard to change a title. An amendment at all.
Well, I'm not certain, and I'm certainly not a lawyer or a bond consultant, but I thought he had indicated that it was quite a bit of work to go back and do all that over again.
I think I recall that too, but then later they said, well, maybe we can come up with something.
Okay. Well, why don't we investigate that and find out what's taking place in regards to that. Any other questions of Deborah? Very good. Is anybody here from the mayor's office, Mayor Munson's office, have anything? Okay, how about the audit committee? Good, Mr. Costello, audit committee?
No report.
No report from the audit committee. Very good. Thank you, Pat. Fiscal committee?
No report.
No report from Mr. Benningham. Land use committee?
No report yet. We do have some revisions coming, and as soon as those get defined, we'll bring them forward.
Thank you, Greg. Looking pretty tan there. Any questions of Greg? Very good. Public Services Committee. Kenny?
No report at this time. There will be a Public Services Committee meeting immediately after the informational meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Kenny. Councilor Knudsen.
I'd just like to add a quick thought regarding the Public Services Committee today. Again, we've worked off and on for about a year on should we or should we not, or how should we revise or improve what's on the books as far as the Board of Ethics is concerned. And I think it'll be a very interesting discussion today. I encourage others who are present today, and particularly city councilors, other city councilors who are not on that committee, if you're able to stay for our meeting, I think it would be a helpful discussion. I'd also like you to know that I have invited former city councilor Bob Jamieson to our meeting, since that, a year and a half ago, he had some, very good, serious thoughts on this topic, and we do expect several members of the Board of Ethics to be present too. So I'm just kind of encouraging a good turnout here.
Well, Dee, maybe you could tempt them with the fact that there's sandwiches for all the council members that attend.
That is an idea, but then I'm afraid I'd have to share my sandwich.
Very good. Questions of Dee on that comment? Being none, now item number 8 is City Council open discussion. Are there any items for the greater good? Mr. Brown.
A couple items. First of all, I wanted to ask my fiscal committee members also if we could at least have a discussion about the notice of transfer between the 1,000 and 2,000 class, the salaries amongst the other funds, because I think that it's pretty important for the council to know, when you consider that salaries make up the bulk of the budget and we have a say in what that budget is. I think it's important for us to know of those transfers.
Councilor Costello.
Council Chair Litz and I had that conversation just 5 minutes ago. We intend to bring that up with the mayor on Thursday morning. So how about if we get back to everyone on that?
That'd be great. Thank you. And then I had another follow-up. A couple weeks ago, I had invited the pavilion staff to come talk about Free First Fridays. And the first event happened Friday night, and I was there, and they had 746 people go through the pavilion on Free First Friday night. A note from Allison Hauk says that the attendance was beyond their expectations. In the 3 hours, they had people filling the Visual Arts Center. They had classes put on there. And it just was an incredible thing, especially since a number of the visitors had never been in the pavilion before. So it really is accomplishing the goal of getting more people into the pavilion. And I happened to be there, and it was literally crowded, which was a great thing to see.
Questions of Councilor Brown on that? Seeing none. Anything else for the greater good here today? I can't quite believe we're not going to talk much on the City Council open discussion here. Usually it's a little bit more lively, but be that as it may, number 9 is presentations. And today we have a special report on code enforcement by lead internal auditor Rich Oaksall. Rich, could you come forward, please?
Thank you, council members. First of all, I'd like to express our appreciation to the courtesy of city staff that we worked with on this special project, and they were very cooperative and very courteous toward us. We also appreciate their professionalism and going about their duties. And also, thirdly, we commend the administration for taking steps last year to coordinate efforts, especially with the collection of unpaid code enforcement fines. The efforts to get everybody together in one room and start talking about that and make a considerable effort to improving the process. This project was not part of our 2008 annual audit program. It was a special request from Councilmember Litz, who came to the audit committee in August, and his request was approved at the August 27th meeting. And we did most of the audit work in September and October. And the purpose of this project was, number one, to determine that the amount of uncollected fines for code violations levied by the City of Sioux Falls, and number two, what steps the city takes to collect unpaid fines for code violations. And in doing this research, code enforcement is just an issue that all cities across the nation are facing, and they have the same problems that we encounter. There's debate among elected officials about enforcing community standards on one hand and respecting private property rights on the other hand. That's sort of the philosophical issues, and then when it comes down to the details of enforcing the ordinances, all cities struggle with these sort of issues. When we're talking about code enforcement, that's kind of a broad phrase, and that covers a lot of things such as weeds, abandoned vehicles, illegal signs. It's a multi-departmental function. We do have one employee that is called the code enforcement officer, and he's located in the planning department. However, there's many employees involved in some extent with enforcing city ordinances, particularly health department employees and park and recreation besides the planning department. The city hired its first code enforcement agent in 2003, and down at the bottom of page 1 of your report, you can see what the money collected so far since 2003 has been each year from property owners. That's the amount that's been collected. That's on page 1 there. Traditionally, the policy on code enforcement has been reactive. That is, if a citizen complained about an apparent violation, the code enforcement officer or another city employee would go investigate, and they had plenty of work to do without patrolling and looking for violations. That changed slightly in 2006 when the city started the Pettigrew Heights cleanup, and there was more of an effort to be proactive in that particular neighborhood. But as I said, there is more than enough work for city employees just handling the investigations on a complaint basis only. As far as methodology, we interviewed staff, management. We attended meetings of the city employees involved with the code enforcement process. We documented procedures. We accompanied the city's code enforcement officer on a typical workday, kind of a ride-along situation. We got figures from the finance department as far as the amount of uncollected fines, and we verified that number independently. And at that time, that number was about $114,000, and we believe that is a correct figure at the time. On page 2, you can see that was as of August 12th. The figure for the health violations, which is a slightly different code in the financials, that was about $45,000 in the middle of August there. So and also on the top of page 3, you can see that at some point we turn over some of these fines to AAA collections, and they are able to keep a portion of the amounts that they collect, and then we receive another portion of that. And the details are at the top of page 3 there. Number 2, what are the steps that the city is taking to collect unpaid fines for code violations? Well, as you probably recall, back in August, you were required to approve that special assessment roll. That was for the tree trimming, the weed cutting, and the sidewalk snow removal. So when the city goes in and remedies a situation and they hire a contractor to do that, they want to recover their costs. So they'll put that on the special assessment roll, and at that point they come to you and require you to approve that special assessment roll. For other code violations, the city turns the bad debt over to a collection agency, as I mentioned just previously, or the city attorney's office will seek a court judgment. Recently, they were able to go to the small claims court and get a judgment that way. However, I think last year the small claims judge decided that the city could no longer use that process, and they had to go to circuit court. So the city attorney's office must go through the circuit court system now if they want to get a court judgment. And also, as I think I said at my opening comments, the city is making efforts now to get together in one room and talk about common issues. And I believe starting last summer, they started having those meetings on a regular basis. And our staff auditor attended several of those meetings to see what they're talking about. And some of the consensus, well, if you could call it consensus, some of the employees are saying, why don't we just turn it all over to collections? There's some issues with perhaps due process involved with that. It's not an easy answer. But we did have several recommendations on the bottom of page 3, and we'll go through those quickly here. The recommendations were directed towards the City Council. However, you should have an administrative response in front of you from Mike Cooper, Director of Planning and Building Services. But the first recommendation, we just said that the City Council should require or request regular reports concerning collection efforts. that's up to you if you want to require that on a every couple of months basis. We just thought that'd be a good idea, that you would ask the administration to give you a report from time to time on how that's going. Number 2, the City Council should consider having a discussion on changing the ordinance to raise the penalty. We felt that might have some impact on getting more compliance, collecting the fines, if we raise the penalty. Right now, the standard penalty is at $100. That goes up every 10-day period, but that is strictly up to the City Council if they think that would be a wise decision. When doing research for this report, I contacted my professional association, the Association of Local Government Auditors. I have a way of emailing local government auditors in various cities and counties across North America, and I just simply asked them, what does your city do to collect fines that are unpaid? And I received 8 responses, and they all said the same thing, that they place a lien on the property tax bill. So I think that's a possibility for us to do. There's a couple of locations that would actually force a sale on the property. That was a rare occurrence, but that was the response from Toronto, Canada, and Chattanooga, Tennessee. I don't know if we're necessarily recommending that, but that's a possibility. I believe you would have to change the city ordinance to do that. You'd have to obviously talk to the city attorney about that, but I think you could possibly do that as city council action. Number 4, we came across a Citizen Policy Review Committee report. This was from Arlington, Texas, and we do have copies of that report right here if you would like to see that after the meeting. And simply what the city of Arlington did, that's a fairly large suburb in the Dallas-Fort Worth metroplex. They simply had the mayor and the city council ask a group of citizen volunteers to kind of go through the city ordinances and just make recommendations on which ones to strengthen, which ones to keep the same, which ones that maybe that we could do away with. And then they came up, they had so many weeks to come up with a report and then present that right before it was time for budget hearings. So that's a possibility that one city found to be very successful. We have a copy of the report right here if you're interested in that. And I think that's it's a case of you simply would ask a group of citizens, maybe what are the top 10 code violations, and why don't you look at this and decide if we need to enforce these, if we don't need to enforce these. For example, parking the RVs in your driveway. Is that a big deal for people, or should we continue to enforce that? That sort of thing. Number 5 was a recommendation that the City Council inquire of the administration about if it's possible to do some cross-training or some centralizing code enforcement responsibilities. What we're talking about here is that there's a code enforcement officer in the Planning and Building Services whose full-time job is to respond to complaints, basically. And we also have another employee in the Health Department that spends probably the bulk of his time doing the same thing with health code violations. We thought there might be a possibility you could have them cross-trained so that they can basically do the same function and some possibility of greater efficiencies there. I know earlier the City Council, I think Councilor Jameson had asked if it's possible for, say, meter readers and Park Department employees to do such a thing like that. It's possible. I would not recommend that, and I don't think the administration would recommend that. I think there's issues with the union contracts and issues with just getting the regular work done that might interfere with that. But I think there's a possibility that you could have, say, 2 or 3 people that do code enforcement full-time and be cross-trained in each other's responsibilities. As I said before, these are strictly recommendations. The Audit Committee understands that we are a little broad in this report. We tried to answer the specific questions of Councilor Lintz. We came up with some recommendations that were not asked of Councilor Lintz, but we thought we added value by doing so. The Audit Committee approved the report as it was written with the caveat that these are recommendations. They're not telling the council what to do or the administration what to do. These are recommendations based upon our audit work and what we've seen other cities do. And at this time, I would be happy to answer any questions, or I know Mike Cooper's also here to answer any questions.
Councilor Knudsen?
Yeah, Mr. Opsel, first of all, thank you for your report. Again, I always find your reports to be very user-friendly to read and understand, and I just like the way your reports are done.
Well, thank you.
A question for you regarding Director Cooper's response. I just see in the second paragraph here where he says the department expected recommendation. Let's see, just a second. I'm on the wrong sentence, sorry. However, several of the recommendations in your report exceed the scope of this audit's stated purpose and crosses over into matters of administrative affairs unrelated to financial practices. So, and I'll just read just that sentence. So, like, in a case like that, when a director feels that way about an audit report, then for future use
Yes.
going forward, does then the audit committee, including you, of course, is there some kind of a discussion that goes on between Director Cooper and the audit committee
Yes,
as far as
yes.
his feelings like that
Yes.
for the future?
Yeah, I think we want to be take those thoughts and feelings very seriously. I do, and so does the audit committee.
Okay.
And Director Cooper was at the audit committee meeting to present the written response back in December, I believe. And then at the time, the audit committee tabled the issuance of the report, so they had further time to review the written comments of Director Cooper. And then in our January meeting, I believe or was it February, our last audit committee meeting, the audit committee reviewed it again, approved the report as written. But we do take the response of directors and the mayor very, very seriously.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councilor Brown?
Rich, too, I also want to thank you. Your reports are always well-written and easy to follow, so I want to congratulate you on that. And just really summing it up, your last line does it all. The process the city uses to collect unpaid code violations is tedious and consumes a large amount of staff time. Nowhere is that better demonstrated than this chart.
Well,
if this wasn't such a sad report on the inefficiency of city government, it'd be funny.
I would say that this is not a reflection on any staff or employees or management. This is simply the process that they're required to go through to come to a conclusion. And it is complicated.
Yeah,
I mean, we
clearly.
can simplify it and put in one paragraph, this is what they seek at court judgment, but the details of getting that court judgment are very, there's a lot of steps involved.
Well, you've hit on a number of items that the council has been asking for years, and just a few weeks ago, I believe the chair had assigned public services to really look at this area, and I would hope that we could move forward with that and examine these recommendations.
Yes. I would ask you, though, to read Director Cooper's responses, and he disagreed with many of our recommendations. But we respect those disagreements, and I believe reasonable people can come to different conclusions on various matters.
Just one other comment. As a counselor, this is the area that I get the most complaints on, code violations. Something as simple as mowing lawns or cars in the streets. And for a long time, I've been one of a number of counselors saying we've got to simplify this method. So thank you for digging into this.
Councilor Knudsen?
Councilor Brown's comments made me think of another question is some of the other communities, other cities throughout the country that you contacted regarding code enforcement,
Yes.
would any of them have any helpful, very practical, helpful organizational charts as far as how they simplify the process that maybe would be helpful to us? Or
I can look into that. Yes, I'm sure they have. But as I said before, it's always, I think every city and county in the nation or in North America probably struggles with this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody's done it perfectly, but
Councilor Costello?
I would just note that from the audit committee that, the scope of the audit was a concern, I think in particular from Director Cooper's side, but I think it's incumbent upon the internal auditors that if they see something that they think is going to add value to it, and I think Rich referred to that as well, it's incumbent for them to include it in their report. And it may or may not go beyond the scope of that, but if there's an efficiency to pick up, and maybe it's a good idea, maybe it doesn't work out, but, you know, they're going to bring it to the table. And that, the other side of this is that, again, these, and probably the primary focus of why we didn't change the audit report is that this is a recommendation only. They're not bound to change anything. This is an administrative matter, but it was just some insight that Rich had found from his investigation on how maybe we could do things a little better.
Anybody else? And, Rich, I too would like to thank you. I think this is a very thorough job, and Director Cooper, I read your comments as well, and I would hope that this council would move forward and come up with something that we think is the right thing. I got to say this too, that a year ago when I requested this, I had no idea the amount of work that this was going to entail and how complex the situation really was, as this chart on the back demonstrates. And it all stemmed from, I had a constituent complain about a property that had quite a bit of junk on it, and somehow that person, and I went with a complaint, somehow that person found out it was me, and I received a phone call, and I thought I had heard all the four-letter words when I was in the Navy, but things turned out to be a little bit differently, and he also boasted of never paying a fine and never would. And so I thought, if there's some way that this council can help the city pull this thing together and put some teeth into these ordinances. That was what I was looking for here. It was not my intent to point out some deficiencies or inefficiencies in government. It certainly wasn't, because I just want this town to be very livable. And I'm also cognizant of private property rights. But you know, private property rights, my private property rights end where my neighbors start. And you know, I have to be aware that what I do on my property affects the value and the appearance of his property. He'll be judged on that, and also his comfort level of being able to be a citizen in the city of Sioux Falls. And so it was with that spirit that I asked for this thing. And Rich, thank you. It was way more than I ever anticipated.
You're welcome.
Director Cooper, would you like to come forward?
Thank you. Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. Just quickly, I do not intend to go through my comments today, but I just want to respond a little bit to the discussion so that we don't leave today, I think, with the perception that this process is completely broken down, because I don't believe that it is. We have a lot of dedicated city staff that work very hard on this process, and we've had a number of discussions individually and as a group about code enforcement over the years. We do intend to look at the recommendations, and we do intend to continue to look at how we can improve our process. As Rich said, we have an ongoing monthly staff report with all the different city departments that are involved in various aspects of code enforcement. And some of the things that we've done since the middle of last year, we've become a lot more aggressive about using our collection agency to go out after the unpaid citations. There's a legislation pending this year at the state legislature that would allow us to use small claims court rather than circuit court, which we think would be a real benefit to speed up the process for those items that need to go through the legal process. We're also working on a software program called Novaline, which is basically a way for all the city departments to talk to each other and to keep track of different property citations using computer software. It's a database system that we're working on. We've become a lot more aggressive starting last year on building demolitions, and you're going to see this year probably more building demolitions than we've done the previous 4 or 5 years. That process can take up to 2 years, but we're trying to speed it up and become more aggressive as we can within the letter of the law. We also are working with the different staff to monitor all the foreclosed properties so that we can make sure that we know which ones have the utilities shut off, which ones might have potential violations or complaints against them. We're going to be putting together some statistical information for 2008 that we think will be of interest to the council and to the public, just to talk about what was accomplished last year in terms of code enforcement and citation collection. We're also working very hard to update our website so that we can make more information available online to the public, and as I said, that we can let people know the status over the last 12 months of what's happening with citations. Last year, based on the city attorney's information, we collected just under $196,000 worth of citations. And at the end of last year, we had just over $71,000 worth of citations that were pending based on various types of action. Most of those are through the court system, and those are typically the ones that take the longest. So, again, I'm not here today to go through all of my comments, but I am telling you that we're very committed to continuing to work on code enforcement and trying to make it even a better process than it is now.
Questions, Director Cooper. Mr. Brown.
Mike, I would just ask that as you look at this, don't only look internally. I would ask that you look at customer service focus. It's still very difficult for citizens, if a car is in a backyard, to know they have to call the health department. If it's in the street, they have to call police or planning. If the grass is too high, they have to call parks. That's not customer focused. It should be simple and easy for a citizen to figure out how to call and what they have to do instead of map themselves through the bureaucracy.
And actually,
that's where I've seen no movement.
Actually, the code enforcement number is really a one-call number, because if you call that, you will get directed to the right place. So, but yes, we're going to continue to look at ways that we can improve the public's knowledge of who do you call and what type of violation do I call about. So,
Councilor Knudsen.
Director Cooper, I have not looked at the this part of the city website for a while, but I thought that was a really good step about 2 years ago or whenever it was, that under the for those citizens who want to know the status of something right now, I assume that they can still go to the city website, siouxfalls.org, and then they can go click on the left on city attorney's office, and then they can find the status of the citations and so forth there. Is that still correct? I haven't asked anyone this for a while.
we keep track of those for a 12-month period.
Okay. I think that would be helpful for people wondering where things are sometimes.
Councilor Benega, did I see your hand? Very good. Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, not so much with code enforcement, but during the past several months, we've been wondering about the Pettigrew Heights. Are we going to get a briefing in the near future?
Yes, I mentioned last time that we are pursuing some state funding, and we just found out now that the application for that is the 27th of this month. So we were hoping it would have been sooner than that. We're making an application for some additional funding that would be used towards our process.
Okay,
but
so
we will,
we'll find out on the 27th about that.
I'll take a look and see if we can bring a briefing in before that.
Okay.
That would be of help to kind of know the status.
Okay, that would be good.
I'd like to point out to Councilor Staggers that a lot of times that application for that state funding, it takes them 3 months, up to 90 days to process those applications as well. And there's 2 times a year, I believe, that they can apply. Is that correct, Director?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes. So, I mean, it's not intentional on anybody's part. We're dealing with government entities to make this thing work, and it just takes time.
So
But
again, I would
this,
just,
this is something that we've been inquiring about for a good 6 months. And, even if we don't have it, the knowledge, on the 27th, we could still get a briefing on what's going on.
I'd like you to know that I've got a project that I've been working on. It's probably going to take me 3 years to complete everything. So, Director Cooper, I'd like you to know that in my neighborhood there were 6 teardowns recently this year, and really have helped that neighborhood. The people that are in that neighborhood, it seemed like it took a long time, but they're very happy about that. 2 of them were burns, and then 4 of them were repos at the bank. And since investigating those and finding out that it's incredibly complex, and it does take a long time, starting with with the banks and the owners and all that. And then another thing was the remediation process of lead and asbestos in the buildings. I had no idea, and I'm a builder, but I had no idea that the process took that long. So, but I'd like to thank the City of Sioux Falls for pushing ahead on those, because it sure helped the neighborhood.
well, there'll be a number of more done this year.
Councilor Jameson.
Mike, I was just wondering what the name of that computer software program was that you're looking at for maybe helping you.
Novel line.
Novel?
Novel line.
And is that something you're in the process of just researching, or have you actually bought it?
No, we're actually implementing it now.
So you've got it in place, you're just trying to get it up and running?
Yep.
I just wanted to share with the rest of the council that in my short time on the council, the complaints about code enforcement are the most heated items that I've ever received a phone call on. Well, I guess there's been a couple there, but code enforcement is such a hot topic, and I jumped into that whole mess trying to figure it out, trying to simplify the whole process, and maybe implementing a cross-code enforcement, cross-training of everybody in the city employment who's employed by the city to help enforce those codes. And I've learned that it's just more complicated than that. The idea of enforcing a code, working with these people who may be tremendously upset about their neighbor's situation, isn't anything that should be taken lightly. And I guess I'm only here to lend a hand. If you guys need more help in some way, tell us so that we can help you. We know that I'm learning. I guess I've come to understand it's a complicated process, but it touches all of the public. And I guess just in my short time, I've had these very heated arguments, not arguments, but conversations with the public who were very disappointed in the city and their neighbor, of course, but anything we can do to help bring that tone down. And if you need help, if there's something you need, you just tell us so we can try to work towards a goal and a solution together and make this thing go better.
I appreciate that comment, and one of the things that I hope to show you when we put our 08 statistics together is that probably on average at least 95% of the complaints get taken care of the first time that we notify a property owner. The ones that take the longest are that 5%, and yeah, we have some very dedicated staff that have to deal with those kind of neighborhood disputes on a weekly basis, and so and then the ones that end up going through the court system take even longer. But I would say, back to Councilor Brown's comment, if we can continue to work on the public service aspect, customer service aspect, and then just make sure that we as city staff are coordinating together as best as we can, that's going to help the process quite a bit. So we are going to continue to work hard on making improvements in all these areas.
Okay, now, a while back, did we recommend that this go to Public Services Committee? Was that the one that we're going to do? Okay, very good. Is all the council still comfortable with that? Very good. Well, okay. Well, I guess with our newfound information, we'll schedule something here on Public Services concerning this item and see where it takes us. So thank you, Mr. Cooper and Rich, for those reports. The next thing up is executive session, and we've had a pending matter concerning, I guess, negotiations for employees. And we still have an outstanding matter to resolve, but I was looking at, we have a committee meeting right after this, so I would like to see if the council feels that there's a consensus for postponing this one more week. Does that sound good? Okay, very good. Then we'll do that. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Seeing nothing, then we stand adjourned. And I'd like to remind everybody that Public Services meets next.